everyone, to this special meeting of the Planning Commission to make up for our snow day from 2 weeks ago. I think this is going to be a somewhat abbreviated meeting tonight, so we'll start with, there's some announcements from, oh shoot. Yeah, anyway, are there any announcements from staff?
Not this evening. I think we'll save them for our next regular meeting.
Great. All right, then we are going to jump right into matters from the public. This is for, there's no public hearings tonight, so you can speak on any of our items on the agenda or anything else that pertains to the Planning Commission. Missy, would you?
Sure,
running
no
this?
problem. So there will be an opportunity for applicants to speak to their items. So if you're here in that role, you'll have that opportunity. But this is an opportunity, matters from the public. It can be any item this evening, actually, that you would want to address to the Planning Commission. There's a limitation of 3 minutes, and we will alternate between our in-person audience as well as our virtual audience. And we'll call on going back and forth from that perspective. So wanted to check in with our in-person audience. Do we have anyone who would like to speak during matters from the public? All right, seeing no one in person, we'll move to our attendees online virtually. If you're interested in speaking and you're online, you can raise your hand in the application. If you were to be on a phone, you would hit *9, which would allow you to raise your hand in the application. Any virtual participants? All right, in person, checking one more time. Okay, virtual? All right, Mr. Schwartz, we don't have anyone.
All right, well, great. So I guess we're going to move on to our first item, which is a special exception for a critical slope at 1115 St. Charles Court. Staff have a presentation for us.
Good evening. Dan O'Connell, NDS Planner. I do not have a detailed presentation for this, but I can just kind of introduce it. So this is a pretty small request to disturb around 500 square foot of critical slopes around the back of an existing residential parcel to permit some backyard improvements, a patio, retaining wall, shed, and that sort. Staff didn't have any conditions attached to this and did recommend approval. The only thing that came up in review was from city utilities, as there is a private drainage easement in the rear yard. So if this does get approved, we would probably ask for a minor development plan to be submitted, and they would review that to make sure that the proposed improvements do not encroach too far into that private easement.
Do any commissioners have any questions or any commentary?
I have nothing directly on the application. Just wanted to throw in that I remember maybe a time when a super basic kind of no-brainer critical slope exception like this would be on our consent agenda. I don't know if we had a policy change to not do that anymore, or if this is just a special meeting so we didn't have a consent agenda, but I think this one definitely merits consent agenda.
This is the first waiver on our new code, so
Yeah.
that might have had something to do with it.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense for the, I would figure that was part of the reason for the next one, for sure. Critical slopes, I guess they're technically changed, so
Yeah.
fair enough.
I would have a comment, but I can't get the internet to work.
Oh, no.
For some reason, it's messing up, so I can't get the packet up, but,
Are you
My-
running a VPN?
no.
Because
Are you just not getting the login screen?
Yeah, it's just
the city
being
doesn't,
slow and
the
weird.
city guest.
It usually takes a while. Anyway, my point was, I can't remember what the foundation for the shed was, but I would vote that this would be okay, maybe in future times, looking at how it attaches to the ground on like a small case like this would make a difference. But this one seems like a pretty small encroachment.
So you're saying instead of like a slab on grade, if they kind of elevate it up or something?
Or something, so water could go under it, or, the things that we're worried about with critical slopes.
Makes sense.
Oh, right. Yeah, they don't have a description.
Well, does anybody want to go with motion?
No, nothing from the applicant.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. That's a good point. Does the applicant have anything they'd like to add?
Not much, just that
And actually, could you come to the microphone? I'm sorry.
Yeah, not too much to add, but just that it's very steep in the back of our house. And not only, did we want to create just like a small flat area for us to use, but we also have a safety concern of, somebody falling back there. I've actually almost fallen when it was really icy earlier, so that's also part of the request. So thanks for considering.
Would you entertain a motion, Mr. Chair? I move to recommend approval of the critical slope special exception for tax map and parcel 48A041B08 as requested, with no reservations or conditions, based on a finding that due to the unusual size, topography, shape, location, and other unusual physical conditions or existing development of a property, the requirements of section 34-4.10-.1 would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the use, reuse, or redevelopment of such property, or would result in a significant degradation of the site or adjacent properties.
I'll second.
Second? Oh, sorry, I didn't know you seconded.
But Missy, would you?
Sure,
call the
we'll
vote?
go ahead and call the vote. Mr. Stolzenberg,
Aye.
Mr. Durantia,
Aye.
Mr. Yoder,
Yes.
Ms. Roker,
Yes.
and Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Oh, so that is approved. Congratulations.
Well, it's recommended for
I'm sorry, that's
approval.
right.
Yes.
Going to council now, I
We
guess.
have that moving on to council next.
I've spent too long in the world of the Board of Architectural Review. Sorry. All right, so our next item on the agenda is a fence at 820 East Jefferson Street.
And I'm going to recuse
Oh, yes.
myself due to relation with someone doing the drawings.
All right, we're ready. Good evening, Carrie Rainey, City Planner with NDS. That's working, I think, okay. We've got a brief slide, if we could pull that up. Okay.
Listed.
Awesome, thank you. Again, Carrie Rainey, City Planner with NDS, here today for a special exception permit to allow fencing at 818 to 820 East Jefferson Street, which is a Cafe Cumbre on the corner. Next slide. So this property is located in our NX node mixed-use district as well as being within our entrance corridor. Just a brief description of the intent of our mixed-use node districts up here on the left, as well as our urban mixed-use core, which is our land designation and our future land map, which defines the district as supporting community housing, employment, and commercial development. Next slide. So the code lays out criteria for city council and for the planning commission to consider while making a decision and recommendations. These are listed here for you on the left. Regarding this criteria, specifically criteria 1, which focuses on proposed modifications being harmonious with our existing and improved patterns of development. The properties in the vicinity of this subject property vary in building setback and front yard use. Those can include parking lot, landscaping, other entranceways. So staff has found that the proposed improvements on this lot to add the deck and fencing would be appropriate for this area. And in addition, the entrance corridor board through the preservation planner has issued the certificate of appropriateness for the entrance corridor for this project. So they've also confirmed compliance with the general area. Regarding criteria 2, support of the comprehensive plan goals and objectives, Excuse me. The proposed fencing allows creation of outdoor seating area that is adjacent to and visible from both 9th Street Northeast and East Jefferson Street, which increase activation and pedestrian interest in line with our mixed-use area goals and objectives, particularly Goal 3 of the Land Use Chapter. In addition, the new seating area supports commercial development by increasing the capacity of the existing restaurant, and therefore staff finds that the proposed improvements would support the goals and strategies of the comprehensive plan. And then finally, regarding criteria 3, whether the permit is consistent with public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practices. As the application aligns with the comprehensive plan, provides outdoor space and street activation within the 9th Street Northeast and East Jefferson Street areas, staff finds that granting this a special exception permit would be consistent with good zoning practice and general public welfare. Staff is not recommending any conditions be placed on the special exception permit at this time. Any proposed modifications that would come forward would need to be reviewed for compliance with the entrance corridor certificate of appropriateness. The applicant is here to answer any questions if needed, and I'm also available to answer questions as well.
Does the applicant have anything that they'd like to add? Okay. Are there any questions from the commission?
I guess my question, also very exciting, first real special exception, sorry, Devin. How did this, like, was there a zoning determination that these improvements are a fence?
Yes, so we met about it as a group and with our previous director, and based on the current definition of fence in our code, we're finding a lot of these elements fall into that definition.
Are we gonna fix that as part of our yearly review?
My understanding is it is on the list for consideration.
Okay, thanks.
Questions?
None. Would you entertain a motion? Or do you have one?
I guess, well, just a clarification. So, you did say that Jeff Warner is reviewing this, so if they make it an opaque railing or something, he would see that and decide whether or not it's okay?
Correct. I mean, if you apply no conditions today, it would still, any changes would need to get that further reviewed by Jeff Warner.
Okay. All right. Yeah, anybody want to make a motion?
I'll move. Mr. Chair, I move to recommend approval of this application for a special exception permit in the NX 10 node mixed-use zone at 818 through 820 East Jefferson Street to permit the installation of fences.
I will second.
Any discussion? Nope. Rory?
Does the wording of this motion, like, allow fences beyond the one proposed here?
Yeah, it says the approval of this application, so presumably all the supporting materials. I thought about that too. That was a little weaker. But
Whether someone could arguably apply it to fences in the other additional locations.
Like, could they then just build a whole fence around the property? I mean, they'd still be subject to
Well,
entrance corridor review, I guess, so.
But it also says this application, which specifically describes what they want to do.
Right, so generally the resolutions that are produced for council are specific to that application package, and so I think it would be fine to also word a motion today that's specific to the application materials in terms of general locations or other things that we might find appropriate.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to amend my motion. I move to recommend approval of this application for a special exception permit in the NX 10 node mixed-use zone at 818 to 820 East Jefferson Street to permit the installation of the fences consistent with the packet drawing and material presentation provided.
You okay with your
I'll
second?
second.
Okay. Missy, could you call a vote?
Sure. Mr. Stolzenberg,
Aye.
Mr. Durancio,
Aye.
Mr. Yoder,
Aye.
and Mr. Schwartz.
Yes.
All right. All right, while you're
Let's see if she woke up.
organizing, I'll go out
She's coming.
and, okay.
All right, so moving on to our next special exception, street-facing entries at Friendship Court Phase 3. Staff?
That's me again. Let's have another presentation. Again, Carrie Rainey with NDS, planner with NDS, here for a special exception permit to alter street-facing entry spacing requirements for the Friendship Court or Kindlewood Phase 3 project, which is at 400 to 426 Garrett Street. Next slide. Yeah, on our maps here, we're showing our property is in the CX8 category, which has a similar intent to our node mixed-use district if you read on our previous sheets. So it's really encouraging a mix of uses and activities and vitality. The same land use designation in our future land use map, the urban mixed-use node, which again seeks to support that vibrant community housing, employment, and community development. Next slide. So this is just some information to help you zero in on where we're talking about today. The Friendship Court project is broken into 4 phases. We're focused on phase 3, which is shown on your left-hand side in the red outline. And most specifically within that phase, if you'll look at the right-hand image, you'll see that we're talking about Building 12 and the frontages along 2nd Street Southeast and Hinton Avenue extended as the subjects of this special exception permit. Next slide. Again, we're looking through our criteria for review and decision by the council and the commission. So we'll go through these items again. So regarding criteria 1, proposed modifications, whether proposed modifications are harmonious with existing patterns of development. The entire eastern block of the 2nd Street Southeast block is part of the Friendship Court property and is being developed as part of this phase 3 and as part of a future phase 4. The western side of the block is comprised of 2 large buildings, which generally vary from 12 to 30 feet in setback and have approximately 2 to 3 entries on each face. However, staff believes some of these entries do not actually meet our requirements for street-facing entries due to their lack of entry feature. The proposed Building 12 will provide a similar setback of approximately 12 feet on the in line with the western side of the block, and as well as proposing to provide 2 entrances along that 2nd Street frontage. So sorry, lost my spot. While these entries are faced further apart than existing entries within the block, staff still believes the street activation generated by these entries, which will otherwise meet the requirements in terms of entry features and other intents, would be harmonious with existing patterns of development. Regarding the Hinton Avenue side of the block, this is a new public street that's proposed as a part of the Phase 3 project. This would be fronted by 2 buildings, Building 12, which is the subject of today's request, as well as Building 10, which is to the east, and a new public park that would be along the southern side of Hinton Avenue. The northern side of the block is proposed to be redeveloped as future Phase 4. Therefore, staff finds that removal of street-facing entries on Hinton Avenue would be harmonious with the patterns of development. Regarding criteria 2, the compliance with our comprehensive plan. Several goals in the comprehensive plan speak to a desire for appropriately scaled redevelopment and compact street networks that contribute to placemaking, improving the pedestrian experience, connecting residents with amenities and destinations. This project creates a new public street network within the development, breaking down the large block into several smaller blocks and providing access to the no public park as part of the project. The applicant's narrative states the 2nd Street Southeast frontage will have additional elements to promote street activation and contribute to placemaking, including seating nodes set back from the sidewalk with foundation plantings. The comprehensive plan also prioritizes the preservation and consideration of streetscape trees and urban tree canopy. The proposed reduction in the street-facing entries will also limit impacts to the root zones of the white oak streetscape trees that exist today along the 2nd Street Southeast frontage, which provide mature canopy and improve the pedestrian experience. The width of Building 12 along Hinton Avenue is approximately 66.5 feet, which is slightly wider than the 60-foot minimum requirement in order to have the side street entries. However, this building is still at a pedestrian scale that is well below the 275 feet building width allowance. In addition, there are There are entries provided along the 2nd Street Southeast entrance as well as the other side of the rear side of the building within 40 feet of the Hinton Avenue facade, which will be generally visible from Hinton Avenue and provide additional activation for that street. Therefore, staff finds that the planned modifications support the goals and strategies of the comprehensive plan. Regarding criteria 3, consistency with public necessity, convenience, general welfare, and good zoning practice, as the application aligns with the comprehensive plan, provides amenities such as outdoor spaces to otherwise activate the street and meet the intent of the street-facing entry requirements per section 34-21013A1, as well as protects existing mature streetscapes which contribute to urban canopy and improve the pedestrian experience. Staff finds granting the special exception permit is consistent with good zoning practice and general public welfare. Staff does recommend approval to modify the entry requirements to be that no street-facing entry maximums are applied to the 2nd Street Southeast and Hinton Avenue extended building facades of Building 12 with the following condition: that at least 2 street-facing entries with entry features meeting the requirements of section 34-21013B are required on the 2nd Street Southeast building facade of proposed Building 12. The applicant team is here and I believe may have a presentation prepared, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention. I'm a little bummed we missed the first special exception permit title by about 5 minutes. We do not have extensive presentation because the staff presentation covered all the bases that we wanted to hit tonight. We have had extensive conversations with NDS staff about this location and how to meet the best needs for the building program of this building and the site as a whole. And one thing that I wanted to call attention to at the end that's actually really important is the preservation of the street trees. It is a tight site. We have a lot of layers there with the build to depth and that we're trying to manage and keep a healthy root system, starting with construction, but all the way through. So, and we're trying to sit very lightly within that space of the trees, between the trees and the building. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners?
So I guess I was just trying to get a better sense of, you know, whether this is a nice to have or a have to have. You know, you say in your letter or your application that Virginia Housing wouldn't fund a building with walk-up units.
No, that's not entirely correct. The Virginia Housing, which is funding this project, has they fund walk-ups units all the time, but the issue is that they want all the units of a certain type and income band to be equitable. So whether you consider it a feature or a bug, whether it's a second access or a security risk, to have 1 or 2 units having this element and the others not is inequitable in their interpretation. That's not a hard rule, but in our conversations with their architecture and engineering team, we've had similar comments.
So, you know, if you were to say, oh, well, the zoning code requires this, they would say, too bad?
No, it makes the scenario. I would not say that. No, that is not what we're resting on. That is a part of our discussion with Virginia Housing and the making the diverse, fully supported community that we want to have here.
Okay. I guess I find it hard to square that with, you know, this project as a whole has been largely designed around residents wanting front doors, right?
Not entirely. There is many of the residents have had conflicting commentaries about the existing, the 202s that are built now. They want independent entries, but many residents have either have family members who need additional care or observation, whether they be small children or adults with special needs, where access control from the interior is a real issue. And limiting the number of routes outside of a unit is really important. At the same time, balancing location of those units across distribution in terms of floors for accessibility and windows. Again, we're trying to just make sure everybody has access to the same kinds of spaces throughout the building and the site. And on phase one, where we have the 2/2s, that the residents that chose to move into those and elected to move into those, that fits their needs. But we need the security and access control of a double-loaded corridor building for this phase.
Even though it would be, what, 2 units that would have a door to meet the requirement? Out of, what, 87?
Correct. So recognizing that the hurdles within this building are to meet this are not, it's not a code issue. You know, it's an issue of the building program. It's about meeting the site with the street trees and the significant burdens of access control that just don't fit as well with this type of building.
Other questions? Nope.
I can understand that just from property management. I mean, from working with the housing the CRHA, the difference between like Crescent Halls and the townhomes and like the different needs there are, but also whoever is managing the property, it's probably easier to have one type of building versus another type of building. And I think if there's reasonable, attention to breaking up that face with the trees, benches, whatever else can make it feel more pedestrian. Also, I'm thinking it probably saves some money and we want this to get done. So that's just I wouldn't want to make those arguments for every project, but in this case with the 2 units, it does seem like a pretty small change. I mean, to not have those 2 units opening out.
And our plan is to activate that facade, in terms of, and we've again had multiple discussions with NDS about the blank wall portion of the ordinance and whether it be hardscape sitting areas that's activated, plantings. We have decorative grills going into the, as part of the ventilation on them.
Well, any alteration to the present conditions, well, not any, but there would be many alterations to the present conditions that would improve that. And that does get, that site is actually very visible because it's at the corner of the Tolstoy light. The cycle is longer than a Russian novel. Yeah. Right.
As any pedestrian will tell you.
Yeah. I've seen people do their taxes while waiting for that light to change. So, yeah, I get the point, and you're going to have to sort of. Again, I think you're going to be fine with how you activate that wall. There's not really a question, it's a comment.
Yeah, I have a similar comment in that, I walk by the Dairy Market building a lot, and it's on 10th Street. They have the ground floor units have doors, and I've never seen anyone use it. And so just the presence of a door doesn't necessarily activate the space, I think. And for this site, having that kind of glass lobby entrance on the corner there will be a big improvement over what's there now. I think I'm more interested in, having a lot of windows and so that you're not walking by a blank wall along 2nd Street. But I caught the same thing Rory did. I was concerned about if if something in the zoning code is problematic for affordable housing, you know, if the zoning code is requiring you to do something that then runs afoul of affordable housing funding because of, you know, inequitable units, that's maybe something else to look at in the zoning code review, although it sounds like it's not really a definite deal breaker in this case. It's just it's one factor in a number of factors.
It makes our job harder, but that's my job, right?
Yeah.
It's best efforts, but a little more of the best efforts as far as the funding goes, because it is competitive, and that we want, that is something that they're looking for in scoring these projects. If you have 30 different unit types of all different shapes and sizes, that might all technically have the same square footage, but are they equitable? Do people know what they're getting into when they look at, when they come into a community? So we're trying to keep things on the same plane.
You're saying it directly factors into scoring? I was looking at the score sheet and I couldn't see anything that specifically spoke to this, that you'd be docked points on, but
Okay.
maybe you could point me to it.
I cannot do that right now, but that,
Okay.
Well, I have a question concerning you've mentioned the streetscape along Second Street and how you're going to promote visual interest, and nothing seems to be defined at the moment, and I'm wondering how that process will work out between you and staff, and kind of who makes I guess staff will make the determination, but I'm kind of wondering what we're going to get. It feels like there needs to be some sort of trade-off. There are fewer entrances, so how do we make this sidewalk more active and inviting? And I'm a little concerned about the fact that I guess we don't know what we're going to get.
sure. That's definitely why we're here tonight, is to have that conversation. We've had the conversation with staff, and we have a toolbox full of things that can go there. It's still very early in terms of the I shouldn't say early, we have the site plans going in, but depending on the comments that we received tonight, you know, we would gauge what the extent of the amenities and how heavily we want to come out into that streetscape there. You know, again, if there's a range of things from the decorative grills that we're already putting into the podium ventilation to again, plantings, or if there's a hardscape sitting area that starts to activate that space. So just what's the range, what's the best thing for the landscape?
Are you looking for feedback from us tonight on that, or is staff looking for
I
feedback?
think we have a
from
good
us?
understanding of what staff is looking for, and it built off conversations around like the blank wall portion of the code. So we have a number of strategies we've discussed with them,
Okay.
but nothing to present.
So in the elevations, you know, those dark boxes under the windows, those are the grills you're talking about, not the benches you're talking about?
Correct.
So is there anything in this packet that shows where these like bench nooks you're talking about are?
No.
Is that something that you guys might be able to better define before this goes to council?
Let's see, what's the schedule for that? Next Tuesday? Yeah,
That
definitely.
sounds like a no.
Yeah. Well, that's not a problem from my perspective. It's just a matter of what to make.
So I think packet gets finalized tonight. I think potentially we could have discussions about items that could be verbally discussed with council as update, opposed to updating our formal materials in the packet. You know, I do recognize what Commissioner Schwartz is saying. You know, I think when staff was reviewing, we considered conditions to those streetscape activation items. But since we had not yet had drawings finalized, and also being aware that, you know, trying to leave some flexibility so that when we get into the actual route areas and where things need to go, that could be accounted for. We didn't recommend any conditions. I certainly would be open to conditions. I would just suggest if the commission's able to provide any flexibility, you know, in terms of that, so we're not accidentally, you know, hitting a major route just to sort of meet a criteria that we set, that would be ideal.
Any thoughts?
Yes, so, like, you know, I get the imperative to see this project built, and I don't want to put roadblocks in front of it, but, you know, if we think back to the reasons why this portion of the code exists, it's about pedestrian activation, it's about eyes on the street, it's about defensible space, and if there's anywhere in the city where those principles must be applied, it seems like Second Southeast is the place, right? Very high pedestrian flow. You know, if we're going to say that those things aren't important and we should remove this from the code because it's annoying for people building apartment buildings to put in, you know, I think that would be one conversation. It's hard to see, you know, based on this site, you know, what a good reasoning for saying that this site in particular should be accepted. You know, I get the trees, but trees are on the street side of the sidewalk. I don't know if I fully buy it. I get the Virginia housing, you know, might have some qualms, but I don't know if I completely buy that either. I think, you know, if we're saying that there's alternative methods to meet those needs, I guess I could be open to that. But we don't see any here, so I'm open to someone proposing a condition that would adequately specify that.
Well, do you have a concept of one?
I'm not an architect.
All right.
I don't want to play designer. So I think there is, because this is a majority affordable housing project, I think there is some room for some leeway, as opposed to just a plain developer built or brought in project. I think we have some, as part of the comp plan, we have some reasons to allow some more flexibility. Yeah, I feel a little stuck on this one. Personally, I feel like maybe I'm inclined to approve it and trust staff to figure out something that's, you know, to work with the applicant to figure out an appropriate streetscape. But maybe future applications like this, it might be useful to get a little more information as to what that streetscape might be, even at a flexible level, but just
Well,
Can we put the rendering back up?
is there a rendering?
Or the,
There's more info in the packet. If we're able to pull up the packet, there might be more graphics.
yeah, actually.
There's a
I'm
proposed
kinda looking at it.
present image, but that, to me, that's kind of hostile. That's a pretty big wall.
Yeah,
This is the
That's second.
elevation.
And is it right that the other day BZA had a similar request for the 10th Street affordable housing and they granted it?
Yes, there was a variance request. I need to confirm, so there was 2 variances approved for 1010 Wirtland, and I believe one of them was for street-facing entries, but I would need to go back and check because they also have 2 administrative modification requests in, and I don't want to misstate which one was which, but they did achieve 2 variances recently.
Yeah, and I'm inclined to make a gentle contrast to Commissioner Stolzenberg's concerns referencing the trees and such. I think it's perfectly reasonable to say that one does not know what one does not know. There are some huge trees along there, and when you start moving dirt around, I'm 100% certain that they're going to find a challenge that they had no idea was there.
And if I could add a point to that, not to jump in, but the applicants have met with myself and other folks, including our urban forester, out on site to talk specifically about these routes. And so there's been a lot of discussion about particular root pruning that needs to happen at correct time. There's been a lot of work by the applicant team to ensure that these trees can continue to thrive regardless of what they're doing there. So there is some pretty substantial information that the urban forester's been able to provide as well on that piece.
And do we know if the urban foresters heard about this request, that like one additional stoop would cause a meaningful difference in outcomes for those?
So I haven't spoken with him directly about it yet until we got some more definite plans about locations where we could really get into those details. But he would be, and certainly as the plans continue, he is one of the reviewers on those plan sets as well. So definitely opportunities.
One of the things that we looked into with that is the floor elevation for the apartment units is several feet above the sidewalk grade, and so to get into those units, you'd need stairs to go up to them, which would either require grading just fill on top of the roots, which isn't great for retaining walls to hold up a sort of stoop situation. Either of those, we're trying to just move all that work outside the root zones just to keep that work as minimal as possible.
I'm picturing, what is the building that is on West Main and Roosevelt, where you come up and they have the big,
Lark, or
yeah, they have the like the big walls and the ramps. And that's probably at least 2 stories, right, up?
It's pretty tall.
And this is, yeah, to hide their parking and so you do see people up once in a while sitting towards the train tracks, and you can like see that they're humans and.
I think this is their pool deck up there. I think.
Oh, is that their pool deck? I'm just picturing where like there's other ways of maybe there's I don't know, without looking into it, but it could be like maybe there's a small trellis with a bench placed somewhere, or some place where humans might gather that would give more kind of interaction to the streetscape. So again, I don't know what particular condition, I don't want to say what would that be, but I'm trying to think of other examples, and that one I'm not saying is the best, but like where there have been, because Charlottesville has such a great difference, kind of strategies to break up that length of a building when it's not so much like if we were walking on a flat streetscape in New York City and we would want to see a street of, like storefront, but thinking about our topography a little bit, sometimes that's a hard strategy. It's just hard to get around the kind of like all the ramping and stairs, so. Anyway, so maybe there's some examples we can all look at around town and find a good way of doing it.
I would just like to, when people occupy a space, especially if it's sloped, that takes interventions, right? Very few people, want to occupy a muddy slope. We plant it, there's ways to do it, but it's just levels of intervention. Again, we're just trying to, this is one spot on the site where we really want to sit lightly. And we can, creep up, maybe we can expand by a little bit of where this, add outdoor seating down near the entry, because we're already in the ground there, we're already doing work. There's, on the other end, that we can kind of expand that a little bit, again, within reason, but we're just trying to minimize the hardscape through there.
Well, is there any more comments?
It's a
or-
mural.
Mural?
No, shut up.
It's an idea.
So
It is also hard because the other corners are not particularly adding a lot currently to that intersection. So maybe there's, future room for improvement on the other side of Monticello, if that ever happens. Or, there's other things that may come after this.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not even so much at the corner where there is this entrance. It's really walking up that block.
Yeah.
And on the opposite side, you have quite a lot of entryways. I'd say most of the pedestrian traffic is probably on the east side, though. I would say, I get the idea of having flexibility for staff. I would feel better if there were at least a vague condition that would allow staff to have some authority over this, some teeth. We could reference what do you guys propose? Benches, seating nooks.
It sounds like if it's
Or
not gonna
other-
create hardscape, which would hurt the trees,
Yeah, I
you know,
mean,
bench it, I mean, maybe,
I
I mean, you
think,
could
I
put in
feel
a
like it's
bench
more up
that
to-
is not
what?
concrete pad, right? You don't, you could just
well,
put a
that's
bench
true,
in.
that's true.
yeah, well,
Um,
yeah, but I mean, if we start putting things in there, then we may end up with really oddball, weird stuff.
Yeah,
And then I
I
would
feel
say,
like-
or other interventions to serve the purpose of this ordinance.
Yeah, I think you all probably
Yeah.
can figure it out.
I like the idea of not naming specific interventions, but asking for something to activate the streetscape.
So something like condition B that I mean, what verb does one use then? Especially mindful, to take into consideration? I mean, all of these things, I mean, that aren't direct orders, you must, get fuzzy pretty fast. And to my way of thinking, I don't think we're quite there to start making decisions about how that's gonna look. It's just, are we okay with 2 doors? And I think the rest of it is really another conversation. But, you know, I don't design buildings
It's
for
not
a
something we
living.
have any review on at the site plan stage unless we have a condition on the special exception.
I mean, it could be could we stick something in as rough as to insist on having such a review?
How about, I mean, I think we could quote the applicants, they've got a paragraph in here on their proposed solution, starting with Building 12 streetscape design. I'm almost, I mean, we could put a condition that
Must
quotes
include
that, but
features.
then says, they're saying they would design to the principles of the zoning ordinance, particularly section 210-12B3 blank wall treatments. And I think the only difference would be they need to go a little beyond just the blank wall treatment requirements. So I don't know if there's it's a long paragraph to stick into a motion, but.
I think even if we were to say that the condition would be features that promote visual interest in the public realm, maintain walkability and public safety, which may include mounted decorative screening, hardscape features, and specialized planting, or other measures, that's appropriately specific but also vague, maybe.
Do you want to, would anyone object to Rory making a motion to that effect?
So what, to add condition B that reads X, and then we'll do the motion itself? Yeah.
I move to recommend approval of this application for a special exception permit in the CX8 corridor mixed-use zone at 400 to 426 Garrett Street to modify street-facing entry requirements for Building 12 identified in the application materials dated January 28, 2025, to require no street-facing entry spacing maximums on the 2nd Street Southeast and Hinton Avenue extended building facades with the following conditions: at least 2 street-facing entries with entry features meeting the requirements of section 34-210-13B are required in the 2nd Street Southeast building facade of proposed Building 12. And condition B, the applicants shall include features to promote visual interest in the public realm and maintain walkability and public safety. These features may include building-mounted decorative screening, hardscape features, and specialized planting or other measures.
Can I offer a friendly amendment? These features may include but are not limited to.
Sure.
I will second that motion.
Any discussion? All right, Missy? When you're ready.
Sure. Mr. Stolzenberg,
Aye.
Mr. Duranzio,
Aye.
Mr. Yoder,
Aye.
Ms. Riker,
Yes.
and Mr. Schwartz.
Yes. All right. That's it.
Thank you all for your consideration and the great comments. Thank you.
I think that might be our agenda. Is there another motion?
Yes, Chair, I'd like to point out that today, or at least February 25th, old school calendar, or old style calendar, today would mark the 302nd anniversary of the death of Sir Christopher Wren. And I move that we adjourn now so that we might raise a glass to him if we should choose to do so.
I'll second that.
All right.
Let's go.